Hello, I'm Dalton Deland. I'm a columnist for the Berkshire Eagle, and this is Eagle Reels, where we take you beyond the news. My very special guest today, Matthew Bishop, principal of Taconic High School. Welcome, Matt.
Dalton, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Really appreciate it. Now, you're sitting in an amazing facility. We see a little bit of it over your shoulder. I know that in 2018, the school was rebuilt for, I think, about $120 million. And you're sitting on what, when I visit it, it's like a city. You've got more than 800 students. You guys are actually handling my filming here. You handle my editing. It's amazing, the professionalism. It's amazing the teaching you have. So tell me about what's called CTE, Career and Technical Education, or vocational school. How is it practiced where you are? How has it changed over the years? And then we'll dig in. Thank you.
Oh, that's a great question and a great way to start. I actually was a teacher in the old building as far back as 1997. And we had career and technical education then as well. But I think your question's an excellent one about how has it changed, because it is not like it was when I started 26, 27 years ago. Career and technical education used to be called vocational. And then I think that sort of lended itself to people being sort of guided into a vocation, where now if we're talking career and technical education, it's very career oriented and also very technical. So vocational education, or CTE as we call it now, has become incredibly more complex, incredibly more sophisticated, and it opens up, instead of just looking into, let's say, somebody in our carpentry program, maybe 20 years ago plus, that's what they were going to do. They were going to be a carpenter. Now in our carpentry program, being a carpenter is an option, but also all of the construction trades, right? We look at our shops in terms of career clusters. So what can you do not only in that shop, but beyond that shop or something related? So it has very much changed. We are very lucky here. Like you said, our community supported a $120 million new school. When we opened, we only had 8 CTE programs, and this year we've just added our 15th. So we have grown, it is in demand, and we're really, really excited about what we offer.
Matt, when you mentioned carpentry, I had a little momentary laugh for myself, because I was lucky enough to be able to take a carpentry class in school, and to this day, if you come over to my house, everyone laughs because I made a 3-legged chess table, which is always falling over and enabling whoever's losing to exit the game. Now, that may be the reason why I ended up having graded down from carpentry into television. But could you tell me about the differences of? I know some of your students are headed to college and so forth. How does that all work?
Yeah, this is actually one of the big misconceptions around career and technical education now. A lot of people think that, if I go vocational, it's either not academic here or that you can't go to college, and nothing could be further than the truth. Career and technical education, you still do the same cores as everybody else in every other high school across the country, right? We have, your math, your English, we have all AP, advanced placement classes, and honors class. We do all of that. What you need to think about with career and technical education in a high school, it's like a major in college, right? You still do all the other stuff, but you sort of concentrate. So instead of a bunch of loose electives, our career and technical education students focus on a pathway as their electives. And then that actually, in many ways, helps them more for college than maybe your average student does. We've done a lot of research, we've looked at a lot of studies, and vocational education, or CTE education, has been shown to actually give students a little bit of an edge when it comes to college. So not only are families happier with a CTE education and feel like they've gotten more out of it than non-CTE, but the research kind of does show that CTE students tend to have more success in college and tend to stick to what they do, stick to the college and finish at a little slightly higher rates than non-CTE students.
Thanks, Matt. I mean, pushing even beyond that to the workplace, there's a study by the National Center for Educational Statistics which shows higher employment rates and salaries for CTE schools compared to general high schools. Is that short term? Does that hold up over time?
Yes, I think it's definitely holding up. One of the things we try to teach, every class in a high school has standards, right, that they have to attack. Ours, not only does a CTE shop have their subject standards, right, so in video, in performing arts, like you have your content, but you also have employability technology standards as well that you have to learn. So those skills, no matter what you do, they will transfer, when you leave here. And actually, that's why I love the opportunity that a CTE education gives you, because I really feel like it puts you in the best place as a senior. For instance, you can do three things really, right? Like, so let's pretend I'm in our cosmetology program. I'm in our cosmetology program. I do it. I get my license, and then I can go out and be a cosmetologist. I can get a chair in a shop. I can maybe pursue my own, but I'm working in the cosmetology field. That's option one. Option two is you might want to go further into your field, right? So you might be inspired in this profession, and you might go to school to further your knowledge with a 2-year or 4-year degree. And then the third option is you can say, well, these are awesome skills. I'll have them the rest of my life, but I don't know if I want to do that, and I want to do something completely different. I was just talking to one of our seniors today. He's our metal fabrication student, welding, bending metal, doing things. And he actually really likes that. And it's skills he'll be able to use. But he's decided he just got accepted to college. He wants to play lacrosse. And he's going to a 4-year university to study environmental science. Like, he just decided, I love what I learned, but I'm going to, go play lacrosse. And I think I'm going to give environmental science a go. So the opportunities are endless, and I feel like you can really find what you're good at and what you love to do here.
Yeah, that student could also be a YouTube star, Matt. I think the number one thing I watch on YouTube are these videos about incredible stuff you can do around your house with metal.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that too, Dalton, because one of the other parts of our standards is entrepreneurship, right? So every shop talks about not only employability and technology, but they talk about entrepreneurship as well. And so no matter what shop you're in, you're going to learn about these opportunities. So one of the things I have seen people research within their shops is, okay, how can I leverage this talent in maybe ways that are unique? And we have multiple students who are graduating here this year and going off to college to study business because in their program they were exposed to business ideas that said, you know what, I want to own my own horticulture business, I want to own my own landscaping business, I want to own my own carpentry business or construction business. So they go out, and we have a number of students going out to school for business. So that I'm glad you mentioned that, because entrepreneurship in business not only is one of our programs in and of itself, but it's spread across all the programs.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, what about college itself? There's conflicting data, given particularly the high cost of college today. I think specifically for you could comment on that generally, but how much is that a factor for your student body?
I think it's a very large factor. I think there's a number of things at play when it comes to this. I think, people are starting to question, like you said, the cost, the purpose of college, but I think also people are learning to do it a little differently. Like when I was in high school, there was never a conversation about, are you going to go to college or not? It's where you're going to go. What are you going to do? It really wasn't an option. Now I realize some of the most successful people I've met in the business world have been people who haven't gone to college and who have started their own business in some way, shape, or form. Particularly around here in Berkshire County, I've seen a lot of, I'm very familiar with a couple painting companies, a couple, HVAC companies in things, and people are very, very successful building those businesses. And they get the education along the way. It's not without that, but I just think the traditional, you graduate, you go off to a 4-year degree, and you do something, and you figure it out along the way. I think that model is just not sustainable, especially when it costs so much.
So let me just shift gears for a moment to the environment of high school. In a neighboring state, in Connecticut, I have a colleague in the business who's been going through a terrible instance of bullying against his son. Schools, experience violence at times. The bullying, it seems to me, and some work I've done, is exacerbated by social media. What are you seeing locally and nationally? How should we think about, as it were, those of us for whom it's been a long time since high school, that environment? Is high school, has it changed due to the things I've mentioned? Is it a safe environment where people still, particularly in urban areas, really try to school shop if they're allowed, or literally live in places so they can be districted in a certain way? What are you seeing? And maybe you could reflect on this for us nationally if you can.
Absolutely. And again, I'll bring it back to sort of my experience as a high schooler, and we were less tolerant than I see students are now. I think in some ways you're exactly right, Dalton. I think things have been exacerbated by social media. We can talk about that in a minute, because I think that is a huge piece of this that we never had to contend with in high school. But I think generally speaking, students are far more tolerant now than we have. Now, having said that, sort of as the nation goes, right? Like, I think you're starting to see students lose a little bit of the ability to have a discussion or debate and be open-minded. And I think you're seeing people dig on both sides of issues pretty entrenched, and there's not a lot of give in between. I think that's nationally, and I think a lot of our students follow that path. But when it comes to bullying, I think social media has not helped this issue at all. And I think it's become such a word, we have to be careful using it. I think people are very quick to say, my kid's bullied, and it may or may not be the case. And we have, there's a difference between bullying, which is repetitive, which there's a power imbalance, as opposed to 1 or 2 instances of someone just being mean. And I think sometimes, I had a student, this is about 10 years ago, in a different school that I was in, came up to me and said, help, I'm being bullied. And I said, okay, what can I do? What happened? And they said, I was walking down the stairs and someone said they didn't like my shirt. I said, okay, what else? What has happened? And they said, no, that was it. And so that I said, let's talk about that, and we help the student. But that's a case of someone just being kind of a jerk, as opposed to the real horrific things that can happen with true bullying that we try to do everything we can to prevent.
You bring up a great point, and it makes me wonder, so the bullying, the social media, often has body image or so forth. What about classic differences? In today's society, we've begun to look at things because race has often been an issue there with schools and school districting. But today, there are things that we've begun to understand, like microaggressions and so forth. Yeah. Are there new turns in how you handle and understand the things that do potentially separate or even, demonize, parts of a school? What has changed? How do you handle the differences as you talk in our society, and any new ways in which we're seeing those play out?
Yeah, I think that's another really good question. Very nuanced. Indeed, there's a lot to that. There's a lot of layers there. I think, personally speaking, one of the things I've had to learn along the way is that you have to be very deliberate and thoughtful about what you say, what you do, because you're right, we are learning about microaggressions. And when you have to be reflective on sort of your inherent beliefs, values, that potential biases you may have, because you may not even know, but you could be fostering that microaggressions to other people. So I think the biggest thing that I've had to learn is to be transparent and open and honest, and realize, despite your best intentions, you might make mistakes. There's something you don't know. There's something maybe you assume. And I think that's been hard for me to understand, because you don't ever want, do no harm, right? That's the first rule. And then you want to support everybody. We want everyone that walks through this door to feel like this is a place where they can get what they need for their future. I mean, we are making futures here. We are giving people life-changing opportunities, and we want to make sure that everybody wants to come here. And that becomes hard, like you said, with sometimes there's conflict. And I'll be honest with you, the biggest issues we tend to have when it comes to kids are kids that were former friends, right? There's you know, they were former friends and there was a falling out, or there's an ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend involved, right? Like it's we don't see a lot of the I'm just walking down the hall and randomly don't like you and going to say something. That is very uncommon. It is the times we see a lot of peer conflict or bullying is when it comes to students who probably most of the time used to be friends or friendly, which is a shame.
Yeah. I mean, Matt, you brought up something interesting in terms of the futurism, as it were, of what we're doing. Public education in general in this country, how much we've moved it into the 21st century. We're here today because obviously I've been struck by how the very programs here, the technical media training and more, it's more than technical, it's editorial that you're involved in here. Seems to me very 21st century. But what do you feel in general? How much of high school education has moved into what we need now and is teaching for change? By the way, it's one of the things I've talked with your students about, that, you know, it's not going to be about learning a software. It's that you have to learn what it does, because you're probably going to, you know, change software every year or two now in the media world. So this educating to be, you know, a lifelong learner. Can you tell us a little about your philosophy and how the school, particularly because of the technical aspect, is able to teach so that they're ready for tomorrow, not just today?
Yeah, that's another great question. I think one of the things all schools have to do, especially ours, is teach students to think. I think thinking and demonstrating that thinking and the reasoning behind it is going to be probably the most important thing we can teach someone. I mean, even in this program here, students are learning on software at freshmen that'll be obsolete by the time they're seniors. And that goes for almost all of our 15 programs. I mean, if you go down to our auto body or auto technology shops, I mean, it's all computers. It's all and I was standing with the instructor the other day, and they had a device plugged into the engine to try to get the time, and it was this amazing device. And I said, "Tell me about this." And the instructor with the kids is like, "We will as soon as we figure it out," right? Because it was even new to them. They're learning; it's new to them. So it's this constant ability to be able to adapt and to think and to understand, you know, concepts and reasons behind things, because you will have to apply them in ways you might not even realize in each of our programs, you know, in the near future.
You know, as someone myself who's hired thousands of people through the decades in media, I have been led to question, frankly, for all of that time, what exactly the college education had done for people who applied. And I felt really, you know, badly that, you know, I felt that at times the HR departments and companies I worked for were screening people out. I will tell you that in my own experience, now obviously I'm not talking about some discipline in which you really need to, you know, proceed in a certain way, pre-med or something. But in media, I will tell you that often my, you know, best staffers and team members could have literally had no college education, or if it was, I felt it didn't really do anything. And, you know, could you just talk to us a moment about your own feelings about, you know, whether we should be demanding college, particularly at its cost level, but even maybe just because, is that the best way to spend 4 years? I mean, I hate to be that revolutionary, but I've been a skeptic about the value of university education for the majority of people.
I think college is right for people at different points in their life, and it may be never. And let me to say that, I got two quick little stories about, just from my own perspective. Myself, I graduated from high school locally. I went to Berkshire Community College. And that was one of the best things for me. I had applied to other four-year schools. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but my parents were adamant they did not want me to get sort of racked up with debt. We had a conversation. I ended up going to BCC for 2 years. I was going to start pre-med, right? So I was all over the place. In those 2 years, I kind of settled in. And then I transferred to North Adams State College at the time, which is now MCLA. And switched majors, became a history teacher by the time I graduated. Graduated, stayed local, worked, paid for the whole thing myself. And then as my career progressed, I went back for my master's degree and ultimately my doctorate from Boston College. So I am, and one of my best experiences in college when I was 45. So I think college will always be there. I think college can be at the right time for people. It doesn't necessarily mean when you're 17 or 18. And I do think this immediate thought of you graduate and go right to college, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's the best. And when you talked about sort of hiring people right out of college, I was thinking as you're telling that story of my son who's a senior here. He's in the horticulture program. And again, like I said, I've been to lots of school myself. My lawnmower broke, I don't know, at the end of the fall, right? And he's a senior here. He's in the horticulture program. And here I am, right, this educated person. I'm looking up YouTube. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. I'm studying it. I'm like all stressed out about how to fix this. And I came home one day and it was fixed. And I said, "Did you fix it?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, how did you do that?" He's like, "I don't know. I just looked at it and, again, had some experience based on and transferred that experience when he learned in the shop to fix the mower." And so I was getting all this like education around it, trying to learn, and he just fixed it. And I think, and it was problem solving and it was a transference of skills. So I think that's like a really good example of, the type of thinking I was talking about earlier, where we need to teach students that type of thinking to solve any sort of problem that comes in front of them.
It's a hazard of having been the child of an early pioneer. My mother was in advertising, the desire to pun. But when you were saying that, I thought to myself, you have a son who's not letting any grass grow under his feet.
Yeah, that's right.
As principal, forgive me for that. As principal, if you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
Ooh, that's a great question. The first is, I would want, we alluded to earlier, I would want every kid that walks through this door to feel like this is the place for them. I think sometimes there's some, it's not always a great fit. And I think some people come here thinking it's going to be one thing and it's something else, and there's a little disconnect there. So I want people to be really certain and feel welcomed and part of the school when they walk through the door. So we got work to do there. Every school does with that, but we know that, and we want to work on that. I think the other wish I had would be that the community would really truly understand career and technical education. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and we keep working and doing our best to make sure people understand what we do and the opportunities for our students. I do think some people still have an older view of what CTE is, but there's a reason there's thousands of kids on the wait list across this Commonwealth, right? Like there's a reason for that, and it really serves kids in a really unique way. And I guess the third thing would be, if I had to think about it, is that we had sort of what we have so much, right? And I would love our shops to be shops and our academics to be more intertwined and interdisciplinary. And we're working on that, because this is new to us. This is really our first year of being fully CTE, and it's just for 9th grade. So the good news is that that's a very reasonable and manageable wish on our part. And I think I've watched our non-CTE teachers work with our CTE teachers, and I'm seeing the excitement, and I'm seeing the opportunities there. And when our teachers feel that, the kids will too. So I'm really, really excited for us to go through this transformation. Next year will be half fully CTE, and as we move forward, having this whole school around a singular mission around career and technical education is going to really be powerful.
Matt, when you mentioned that excitement, my last question, and you mentioned when the kids walk in the morning, when that school bell, if that exists anymore, when that school bell rings first thing in the morning, What goes through your mind, your body?
Yeah, that's two things. One is I always ask myself, and this is true, I wonder what challenges await me today, right? Because there's always challenges in the scope of education in 2024, right? In any school. And the other one is what student am I going to talk to that's going to just give me that story that's going to brighten my day? Because there is one every day. You walk through the halls. How you doing today? What are you doing today? Like for instance, our culinary and early ed programs teamed up today to sell Shamrock Shakes at lunch, right? And they've been doing it as a fundraiser, and they were super proud of it. I got my Shamrock Shake. Everyone was happy today, so I'm a little wired from the sugar. I apologize. But it's been like just seeing what I see on a daily basis. I was in 4 classrooms today. I heard kids talking about their weekend and relating it to business opportunities in our business classroom. I went into the greenhouse and saw students planting plants for their spring sale and discussing the arrangement in the baskets and explaining why you fertilize and what it means, all the way to, going into carpentry and seeing them explain, what they're going to be working out in our partner with Habitat for Humanity. Again, all of our amazing shops were every day I love just popping into and seeing what they're doing. And then doing this, of course. Like this is fantastic. Like watching our students direct, run, produce. I went down to culinary last week and members of Video and Performing Arts, this program, we taped a segment on how to cook a low country boil. And to watch the student chefs and the student performers from Video and Performing Arts direct, talk about shots. Like, it was amazing just to sit back and just watch how far these students are ahead of everything. It's just super exciting.
Matt, talking with you today represents that same joy for me. I thank you so much for what you and your faculty and your students are doing, and I appreciate so much your being with us here today. Matthew Bishop, principal of Taconic High School. I'm Dalton DeLand. I'm a columnist for the Berkshire Eagle. And if you are already a subscriber to the Berkshire Eagle, thank you so much. If you're not yet, please consider becoming one. It's how we keep journalism and sharing stories like this alive and vibrant in our communities. I'll see you next time on Eagle Reels and in the pages of the Berkshire Eagle.